Serious. Those who have explored abandoned buildings that went seriously wrong, what happened? When I was a teenager and some friends and I had nowhere to live, we found an abandoned house in a fairly dodgy suburb to live in. One of the people I was with said it used to be a drug dealer's place and he had left town indefinitely, so we figured we would be safe to squat there for a while. It had super high fences which we had to climb to break in through the back door, and the first thing we saw was an old dog chain that had been snapped and there was dried blood around it on the concrete. It's not super relevant, but it gives you an idea of how grungy the place looked. We all slept in one bedroom out the back that had no front-facing windows, and when we left during the day, we would hide our backpacks in the ceiling through a hole we found. At night we kept all the lights off. One night we got awoken by a massive banging on the front door. Like really loud thumping that reverberated through the entire house. Think like if the cops were desperately trying to get the attention of someone in an apartment. There was nothing shouted, so we knew it wasn't police. We just stayed as quiet as we could until it went away. The next morning when we left there was a huge knife shoved through the wood at the front, embedded halfway down the blade. We left it there. The girl that was with us decided it was not safe there, so she took off the next day. I don't remember where she went, but she didn't come back. She probably went to one of the shelters in the city. Me and the remaining guy went out a day or two later to get some food, and when we got back, we found that the windows had all been smashed in by rocks thrown through the windows. The remaining furniture had been trashed. Beds flung onto their sides, couches pushed apart with their cushions ripped. Someone had clearly been looking for something. We said fuck it, booked it out of there and moved to a park. Way more open, but significantly less terrifying. One summer when I was a kid it somehow got popular to explore the storm drainage system underneath our neighborhood. Yes, like the ones in it, but just boring concrete. These were the round tunnels made from pre-made pieces. Getting into the pipes required crawling through a tight fit for 15 to 20 feet, but after that you could stand. As you explored the system you'd find areas that were big enough to drive a golf cart through, though it would have been impossible to get one there. Occasionally there would be odd structures, like grates that looked like prison bars that only covered half the pipe. Very rarely there would be light coming in from a grate in the road above, but most of the time we needed flashlights to see anything at all. Every single sound was nerve-wracking, because technically there shouldn't have been any sounds other than running water down there. Of course, we weren't the Goonies, so we didn't have a map or the sense to make one as we went along. Most of the local kids had gotten to know the system well enough to navigate though, and we figured out that, if you got lost, you just always chose the turn that led to a bigger pipe, because the biggest one ran about a half mile outside the neighborhood and emptied, in a 15-foot plunge, into a local pond and creek. Well, one day my brother, who was essentially fearless, and some friends decided to go a different direction from the main junction to explore a tunnel none of us had ever ventured to. I admitted, I was too scared. I don't know why on that day I was creeped out, but I was. So two friends and I stayed in the junction while my brother and his two friends went exploring. After they were gone for 10 or 15 minutes we heard terrified shouting and running footsteps echoing down the tunnels, coming toward us. My friends ran. I wanted to run, but that was my brother down there. Finally, through the dark tunnel I heard one of my brother's friends shout. Go. We all ran the big tunnel, because instinctively we knew that whatever was down there would catch us if we had to shimmy back through the small pipes to get out the way we came in. So we ran, hard, flashlight beams bouncing off the walls, until we finally started seeing light from where the tunnel emptied into the pond. One by one we all reached the drop and just kept running into thin air, falling into the pond below. I was terrified of heights and I didn't even know how to swim, but that didn't stop me. As I was making my way to land my brother and his friends came shooting out of the pipe and into the pond. For a moment I thought they had been playing a prank on us. But no, my brother immediately insisted that we all go home. He wouldn't even tell me what happened on the entire, dripping wet, almost a mile walk. The whole group went to my house and my brother, knowing we would all get in trouble, told my mother where we were and what we had been doing. He also told her that when he and his friends reached the next junction in the tunnel they were exploring, they came across a spot where light was trickling in from above. There was a pile of trash and debris built up around one of those half-pipe prison bar grates. And laying within that pile of trash, they saw a man who upon hearing them, raised his head, reached out towards them, and started crawling out of the trash in their direction. So they ran. My mother called the police. They asked my brother to guide them to the location in the pipes where this happened. They found exactly what he described, but the man was gone. Within minutes there were at least a dozen police cars around our neighborhood with people and dogs searching that drainage system. They wouldn't tell us any details, but we do know that they never found the man. The dogs followed his scent to the end of the pipe at the pond, but they never picked up the scent anywhere on the ground around the pond or creek. As far as I know, none of us ever went into the storm drains again. It was a really old house in the woods. Pretty sure there was a fire or something because there was a stone slab and chimney next to the house, where a place used to be with fire damage. 3 of us wanted to see what was in the place, so we started exploring. Some ruined furniture was still there, and moth-eaten carpet. Coolest thing in there was an old wooden chair with some impressive carving work. We ventured upstairs and that is when things went wrong. 2 steps in and creak crack, the floor split open and my buddy's leg went through. Lucky for him he had jeans on and nothing got broken. We decided not to check out the rest of the place and made our way out of the woods before it got dark. About 2 years ago my friends and I had found out about an abandoned insane asylum located in Downey, California. Being the curious 17-year-olds that we were, we decided it'd be a good idea to go explore this abandoned facility just to see what we could find inside. So on a Saturday night we gathered a few more of our friends and made the drive out to Downey so we could explore this building for ourselves. After about 30 minutes of driving we arrive in Downey and make our way through the city to where the asylum is located. The closer we get, the shadier and shadier the neighborhoods we're passing through become, and after about another 15 minutes of driving we arrive at our destination. We park the car, climb through a hole in the fence, and make our way into the building to see what we could find. To be honest, it started out not being too bad. Considering we had about 10 people, we were thinking, what's the worst that could happen to a group of 10 people? So we meander through the building, looking at all the broken furniture scattered throughout the rooms, the patient files thrown upon the floor, and we're pretty much just having a good time looking at once was this weird mental institution. But this is where shit gets weird. As we're walking we of course had a flashlight pointed down the hallway because the power that was once in this building was and is clearly out. But as we're walking with our flashlight pointed ahead of us and we come to a corner, we see the adjacent wall of the corner light up from what we assumed was another flashlight, and sure enough we turn the corner and there's another group of 4 kids, shady, weird fucking kids. We confront each other and they ask us if we'd been to the slide. We politely answer no because we have no idea what they're talking about and they tell us that we should follow them. Of course, we decline because we're getting weird vibes from these people, and as they're talking amongst themselves one of the kids comes up to me with, I kid you not, a solid 6-inch long Bowie knife looking thing. Isn't this cool? Look what I found, as he moves the knife closer to my face. I politely answer what a cool find that is, and we start to back away telling them that we're going to go explore the roof of the building. Surprisingly they say alright and they turn the corner and continue on their way. Alright, now that was out of the way, I'm seriously beginning to feel weird about being in this place and about how we're definitely not supposed to be here. So at that point I say fuck it, we need to go to the roof, go down the fire escape, and get out of here. So we make our way to the roof and we're sitting there plotting our escape. Like I said, people are not supposed to be in the asylum, so they have a police car stationed at the main gate to make sure no one comes in. So as we're up there we try and figure out the best path to get out of here without getting noticed by the police. That's when my friend sees a fire escape ladder coming down off of this higher portion of the roof. We decide that that is probably our best bet, so we grab a small ladder that will be able to boost us up onto this higher portion of the roof. My friend Jonah goes up and immediately turns around so he could help other people out by pulling them up. As I'm getting myself up there, my heart completely fucking sinks. Jonah, did you not see this when you got up here? I whisper. What the fuck are you talking about, man? He responds. I'm looking forward and he slowly turns to see what was pretty much our worst fucking nightmare. There's about 15 hooded people sitting in a circle up there surrounding a burning cat or some other dead animal. These motherfuckers are talking in tongues and just making noises which seem satanic. As we're both getting down we get noticed and they start talking amongst themselves in this weird language, and as soon as we get down these motherfuckers stand up and start sprinting towards us. I tell everyone to ditch the idea of the fire escape and not to worry about the cop, we need to get the fuck out of here. So we start sprinting through this building with this cult in close pursuit behind us. We miraculously make it of the building and are starting to run across the field to the main gate, and as we're doing so the cop notices all the commotion, turns on his sirens, and comes driving in. Thank God he manages to cut the cult off from us and he starts to chase them as we get away safely. Honestly, I can safely say it was the scariest experience of my life. What would we have done if they'd taken one of our friends? Would we have to go back in and confront them? I don't know and I'm glad that it didn't happen. I used to live in Virginia when I was younger and I had a good friend that I often stayed over at her house. Her dad had her one weekend and invited me over. We ended up going to his friend's house. It was a beautiful plantation house out in King George, I think, County. 3-story house with a lot of the original Civil War era furniture still inside. Some of the beds and stuff had sheets on them, and the Smithsonian was supposed to come out and get the furniture. The guy had gotten a great deal on the house because it was so old and needed work and was apparently haunted. The house was amazing. There were little metal-lined holes in the wall in each room where a little fire would go, and I think piping connected them. But I wasn't really sure. There was a small cot in one of the upstairs rooms that still had bullet holes in it, and there were dark spots on the floor that may have been blood, and there were bullet holes in the ceiling. The guy that lived there had a friend come and bless the very bottom floor where he lived. It was like a studio apartment. There was a bathroom, a kitchen-like area, a fireplace and a pull-out couch that he slept on. He told us how there would be footsteps all night throughout the upper floors and banging on the door that led to upstairs, which he obviously kept closed and locked at night. Now, onto the abandoned building part. My friend and I decided to explore the property, which had several slave cabins on it. They were pretty dilapidated and in need of some serious repair when looking from the outside. We decided to go into one and found a lot of furniture and paintings that were in surprisingly good shape. Upon entering the cabin, though, we just got this overwhelming feeling that we were not supposed to be there. It just felt wrong, like this overwhelming feeling of dread. I told my friend that I felt like some bad things had happened there. We decided to press on and started up a ladder that went to a loft inside the cabin. There were holes in the roof and we could see sunlight coming through. I got up to the top, looked into the loft, and just felt like I had to get out of there now. I didn't see any ghosts or bodies. Nothing creepy happened. Nothing moved. I just knew I had to get the fuck out of there. I don't know how to describe it other than that. Maybe it was supernatural, maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me. But something told my little 13-year-old brain to get out of that slave cabin that day or else. So we did. Me and my friend got the hell up out of there. As soon as we left and had taken a few steps away from the cabin, we could feel the dread and trepidation just melting away. I am in my 30s now, and it's an experience that I share all the time because of how intense that emotion was. Even now as I type this, I feel that dread washing over me as I remember those paintings behind the couch in the cabin and how my legs trembled as I climbed the ladder. Was working at a huge old farm in New Hampshire. It was raining one weekend, so they pulled us mostly out of the fields and into the farm buildings to do work. I was tasked with going up over the gift shop into the old barn and bringing down some folding chairs. I climbed up the stairs into what was clearly the old office area. Everything in it looked to be from the 1950s. It really looked like they had just shut the door to the offices one day and never went back. I don't know if it was the gloom of the day or what, but there was a stillness in the air up there that just unnerved me. It honestly felt like the room was holding its breath or was listening for something, like when you think you hear an unknown noise in your house so you go very still to see if you can hear it again. I didn't like it and I didn't want to get in trouble for dawdling where I wasn't supposed to be, so I pushed on through to the main loft of the barn. I crossed through the door to the haylift and I notice immediately to my right there is a ladder that goes up into a room at the roof of the barn. I've never seen anything like this. It's like there is a room at the very top of the barn with a single doorway in and out of it. Not a cupola or anything like that, it doesn't connect to the outside. It's easily 15 feet up from the floor I am standing on. The first thought to pop into my head was that they kept someone up there. I look into that doorway from the foot of the ladder, and it is black. Blacker than black, and suddenly I am totally transfixed by this darkness. I can feel something up there staring back down at me, and whatever it is, it does not want me there with an intensity that I could honestly describe as hatred. I force myself to turn away from it and retreat back down to the main building to collect myself. My sister was also working there at the time, so I grab her and a friend to help me out because I am not going back up there alone. I say nothing about the feeling I had because I didn't want to spook them, but when my sister gets up there she too reacts to that darkness and the overwhelming malevolence in it. We quickly gathered what we could and booked it out of there. It's hard to describe feeling so threatened on a primal level, but not being able to pinpoint where it is coming from. We sometimes mention it to each other still almost 25 years later. I used to explore the Michigan Central Station in Detroit before Ford began renovations on it. 18-story building and a pitch-black basement. There were a few ways to get in, but the best entrance and least likely to get you caught by police. They patrolled around this building regularly because people tried getting in so often. Was a tunnel dug underneath the steel wall of the train garage next to the station. It wasn't a long tunnel, it just went deep enough into the ground to clear the wall and then right back up again into the garage. The garage itself was pitch black, with numerous pits so mechanics could work under the trains. Imagine it similar to the underground areas at an oil change shop. These pits though were full of trash, broken glass, scrap metal, and other items that could easily impale and kill you by falling in. It was absolutely essential all who went brought a flashlight for navigation in these areas. However, it was equally essential you did not use your flashlight unless you absolutely had to, as any light shining out from within the building could easily be seen by individuals outside the building. Most likely police. This particular trip would be my last for more than one reason, and the individuals I took with me had much less experience doing urban exploration, particularly at this building. James had been once before, but hadn't been through the entire building. Chris had never been, period. I explained the flashlight rule, I explained the dangers, and I especially explained the police presence around the building. We headed there in the evening, and by the time we got there it was almost night. Getting in went well. We hung around the car until we saw one officer drive by the tunnel entrance. As soon as he turned the corner we booked it, one by one into the tunnel, and back up again into the garage. We navigated into the building and began to explore. The building was known for its amazing graffiti. In particular, the 13th floor's graffiti was all themed on hell, Satan, and other unsettling words and imagery. We made it all the way up to the roof without a hitch, looked out in awe at the 360-degree view of Detroit, and started to make our way back down. This is where shit started to go very bad. Chris, despite my warnings, kept turning his flashlight on to look at graffiti. I had to continuously tell him to turn it off, but it was like he turned into a child. He wouldn't listen. James kept going off on his own to look at shit, even though staying in a tight group is what kept you safe, or safer I should say. On our way down, James sees one of the open elevator shafts around the 10th floor. He decides he wants to throw a glass bottle down and watch how far it goes. I plead to him, it's not worth getting that close to it, it's too dangerous. He says he'll be careful and walks over to it. He throws the bottle in, leans into the shaft to watch the bottle fall with his flashlight, and to my absolute horror slips on a broken piece of flooring, falling into the elevator shaft, 10 stories up. I ran over to the shaft thinking I was about to see my friend's lifeless body all the way down at the bottom, but unbelievably, he grabbed the elevator cables as he fell and was 2 floors below us, hanging on for dear life. He screamed for help, and I told him to hang on, do not let go. Me and Chris booked it to the staircase, and I nearly killed myself as I leapt down the staircase trying to get to the floor I believed he was closest to. I ran to the elevator shaft and looked in. He was right above me between floors, still begging for help. I told him he was too far up, he had to come down a bit farther for me to grab him. He was in tears, crying, and told me he couldn't. He had sliced both his hands down to the flesh grabbing those cables. I told him he had to, there was no other way. I gave him words of encouragement and told him to fight the pain, he had to slide down farther. He slowly worked his way down, screeching in pain, but got close enough that me and Chris were able to reach out and pull him in. His hands were a bloody mess, 2 thick gashes across both of them. I took off my undershirt and wrapped up both of his hands. As relieved as I was he was alive, I wanted to beat his ass for his stupidity. After re-aiming him out, nearly in tears myself, I told both of them it was time to go. As we made our way down the remaining floors and into the main lobby, I see Chris, who is slightly ahead of us, stop in his tracks, quickly back up and turn around. Even in the dark I watched his face turn ghost white. I asked what was wrong, all he said was, "Cops." 4 Detroit police officers just entered the lobby from the main entrance. I looked at both of them and told them, "Follow me now, fast." I took them through a maze of hallways. My adrenaline fueling my navigation. But even I hadn't explored every hallway of this place. Sure enough, we hit a dead end with nowhere to go except a pitch black room next to us. We went into the room and stood against the walls. "Not a fucking sound," I whispered. We could hear the cops' radios going off and footsteps getting closer. A few minutes went by, then an officer proceeded down our dead-end hallway, his flashlight beam bounced in and out of the room we all stood in. We held our breath as he was feet away from the room and then heard him say on his radio, "This hallway's all clear." He turned around and proceeded back down the hall and around the corner. We stood there, dead still, for what seemed like an hour. I could hear my heartbeat inside my ear canals like a drum. We waited until it was dead silent, stealthed our way back to the train garage as slowly and quietly as we could, and made our way out. The car ride home was dead quiet, and I never went back to the train station again. That was 14 years ago. I don't know if you can say it went seriously wrong, but here's my story. Me and 2 friends, one of whom was a photographer, went and explored an abandoned school in my hometown when we were teenagers. It was a rainy, dreary afternoon in March. We were all out for a walk after the rain had stopped so our photographer friend could take some pictures and our path led us past the school. I had walked by it multiple times in the past and I always wondered what was inside. As we approached, we noticed that the front door was propped open slightly, so naturally we went inside. No flashlights and this was before cell phones became ubiquitous, so no light sources other than what filtered through the windows. The place was in the middle of being converted into some sort of museum dedicated to World War II, which was a weird thing for a school in the middle of rural Pennsylvania in a town of less than 2,000 people. It was creepy as hell in there. Everything was dusty and the smell of decay was everywhere, and all over these decrepit tables were little presentations about different battles and concentration camps. It looked like nobody had been inside the school for at least a year. We got to the stairwell and collectively agreed there was no way in hell we were going to the basement, so up we climbed. The second floor was untouched. The stairs opened up into a large central hall with 3 or 4 big classrooms on the outside. We wandered around the classrooms for a bit and everything was still in place like school let out for summer 20 years ago and nobody ever came back. Books moldering away on the shelves, faint traces of chalk lines on the blackboards, desks covered in cobwebs. The eerie feeling I had gotten upon entering the building was getting stronger the more time we spent there, but my friends insisted we check out the attic before we leave. Finally I agreed and we climbed the final set of stairs. As soon as I got to the top of the steps, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. The attic was pretty much pitch black, save for one big circular window at the front of the building. There was no floor in many places, just exposed beams. We tiptoed across as we made our way to the window, stepping over moldy insulation and the occasional rat or bird skeleton. We get to the window, and as we stood there looking out, my eerie feelings turned to dread. Even though it was March and fairly cold outside to begin with, it felt like my blood had turned to ice. As my photographer friend is snapping pictures, I started hearing voices from downstairs in one of the classrooms. I whipped my head around to ask my friends if they had heard it too, and they were both looking at me with fear in their eyes. They heard it too. My more rational friend thought maybe the museum workers were back since the door was propped open when we got there and all. So we all hurried back to the stairs as quietly as we could. As we crept down the stairs, the voices abruptly stopped. The 3 of us froze, thinking maybe we had been heard sneaking around, but after what felt like 5 minutes, the sound never returned. We got to the second floor landing and peeked in each of the classrooms. They were all empty. The knot in my stomach tightened and we all looked at each other nervously. "Let's get the fuck out of here," my photographer friend said, and we all rushed down the final set of steps and out of the building, not caring if we made any noise at that point. A week or so later, my photographer friend showed me some of the photos she had taken in the school. There were a couple with weird ghost orbs in them, which to be fair, could have been dust motes catching the light just right. But the one that stuck out the most was a shot of that big circular window in the attic. The lower right portion of the photo was obscured by this weird mist that almost looked like cigarette smoke, only none of us smoked at the time, and it wasn't cold enough to see your breath that day. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please drop a like, and to stay up to date with my latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking the button under this video.